For 35 years, I never imagined a simple family dinner could unravel everything I held dear. The flickering candlelight on the mahogany table, the soft radiance of the antique crystal chandelier, the savory aroma of the beef bourguignon. It was all a meticulously crafted deception. And I, completely unsuspecting, walked right into it. My mother, Eleanor, had telephoned 2 weeks prior, her voice unusually melodious. "Isabel," she'd cooed, "you must come home for dinner. It's been far too long since we've all been together." I hesitated. For over a decade, I'd grown accustomed to my parents' conditional affection, their outreach only occurring when they needed something. Yet, a flicker of hope persisted. Perhaps, just perhaps, this time would be different. Perhaps they genuinely missed me. So I drove from San Diego to my childhood home in Los Angeles, abandoning my demanding work schedule and crucial business meetings. I arrived brimming with hope, only to have it shatter within minutes of settling at the table, like a delicate glass of vintage port tumbling from unsteady hands. To preempt any future misunderstandings, my younger brother, Thomas, announced smoothly, his words sounding rehearsed. He reclined in his chair, arms folded across his chest, a barely concealed smirk playing on his lips. Beside him, my younger sister Genevieve idly twirled a lock of auburn hair, a triumphant glint in her eyes, as if she'd just won a significant gamble. I lowered my fork, suddenly finding the carefully prepared stew more difficult to swallow than I ever had before. "What?" I asked, my voice tight but controlled. Eleanor, the architect of this supposedly warm family reunion, sighed delicately. "Your father, Arthur, and I have finalized our estate plan. This house, the beachfront property in Malibu, everything we own, will be inherited by Thomas and Genevieve." Her words struck me like a dagger to the heart. I turned to Arthur, desperately hoping, praying, he would refute this, declare it a cruel jest, but he only stared down into his glass of red wine, offering no contradiction. I inhaled deeply, searching for a shred of rationality amidst the chaos. "Why?" Thomas shrugged, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Because you don't need it, right? You have your successful business, your beautiful home, a comfortable life. Mom and Dad believe Olivia, and I require more financial support." "Support?" I scoffed, my laughter hollow and brittle. "What exactly constitutes supports in your minds?" "Genevieve, you haven't held a steady job for over 6 months," I pointed out, my voice rising slightly. "And Thomas," I continued, "how many different university majors have you pursued?" 5, maybe 6, he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "And of course, my parents had diligently paid every tuition bill." As I spoke, my breathing grew faster, my heart pounding with righteous fury. Eleanor crossed her arms, her gaze icy. "Isabel, there's no need for this dramatic display. Your father and I have given this considerable thought. You don't require these assets. Thomas and Genevieve need a strong foundation to build their futures upon." "A foundation," I laughed, a humorless sound. "And what about the substantial financial contributions I'd made? The mortgage payments I'd consistently handled, the utilities I'd covered, the extensive home repairs I'd financed, the $75,000 I invested in the Malibu renovation. Does no one recall those contributions?" Genevieve chuckled, her eyes filled with mocking disbelief. "Oh, you're meticulously tracking every penny. How disappointing, Isabel. You're wealthy, why be so miserly?" I stared at her, incredulous at her brazen audacity. "Miserly," I stressed each syllable. "No, Genevieve, this is outright fraud. Exploitation." Eleanor slammed her hand on the table, causing the glasses to tremble. "Enough, Isabel, stop playing the victim. You're obsessed with money. It's never enough, is it? We did this not out of lack of love for you, but because we love all our children equally." "Love?" A chilling rage pulsed through me. Thomas leaned back, feigning sympathy. "You're acting like a child who's had their favorite toy taken away. We're all adults here, Isabel. You should learn to accept reality." His words no longer enraged me, they simply illuminated a harsh truth. I'd been deceived my entire life. They'd never truly considered me a valued member of the family. I wasn't their daughter, I was their personal bank. Now that I was no longer useful, they were prepared to discard me without a second thought. Slowly I placed my hands on the table, gripping the edge of the tablecloth. I took a steadying breath, allowing the anger to subside. When I looked up, my gaze was glacial. I understood now. They didn't need me, and I certainly didn't need them. For the past decade, I'd believed family was a sanctuary, a place of unwavering support and mutual affection. But the reality? I wasn't their daughter. I was an ATM. And now, having outlived my usefulness, They were ready to dispose of me without a moment's hesitation. Eleanor, who called only when bills were due. Arthur, who never opposed Eleanor's decisions, even when they were unjust towards me. Thomas, who squandered endless amounts of my money on unfinished courses. And Genevieve, who had never held a serious job yet possessed enough designer clothing to fill a small boutique. My voice dripped with bitterness. And what about the significant financial assistance I provided? Does that deserve no recognition? Eleanor crossed her arms, her gaze as sharp as a shard of glass. Isabel, you only ever talk about money. No sum is ever sufficient for you, is it? Never enough, I repeated, a whisper escaping my lips. I've been paying the mortgage on this house for 6 years. I was the sole guarantor when you faced bankruptcy. I financed the Malibu property renovations, because you claimed it was essential to preserve it as a family asset. And now, I'm not even considered part of this family? Genevieve shrugged, her eyebrow arched with feigned indifference. No one compelled you, Isabel. You simply enjoy playing the hero. That statement felt like a stinging slap. You're right, no one forced me. I did it because I believed family was about mutual support. But I was wrong. I was the only one making sacrifices, while the rest of you only knew how to take. Thomas scoffed. You're behaving like a child who's lost their favorite toy. The rage surged within me. A toy? I enunciated each word, feeling the heat rise to my cheeks. I've spent nearly $500,000 supporting this family over the last decade. I postponed my dreams, forwent travel, a larger home, significant investments in my own future. All so you wouldn't struggle. And now, you label me greedy because I request a modicum of fairness? Eleanor shook her head, sighing as if I were an obtuse child. Family is about love, Isabel, not money. I let out a hollow, mirthless laugh. Love? I looked around the room, at the house I'd poured so much time and money into maintaining. If that were true, why does love only seem to emanate from me? Why am I perpetually the one making sacrifices? No one answered. No one ever answered that question. A chilling silence filled the room. I saw it in their eyes. No guilt, no remorse. They didn't believe they'd exploited me. They were simply annoyed I dared to demand fairness. A sharp pain pierced my chest. Why had I ever believed they would change? I rose to my feet. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor, the sound jarring in the tense silence. I've heard enough, I said coldly. I'm finished. Eleanor blinked, clearly taken aback. What did you just say? I met her gaze, my words measured and deliberate. I'm finished. I have no further obligations to any of you. Thomas laughed, but there was an undercurrent of unease in his tone. What? You're going to abandon the family, just like that? I stared at him, unwavering. Yes, and you'll soon fully comprehend the implications. I turned on my heel, not waiting for their reaction. Eleanor's voice rang out behind me, sharp and frantic. Isabel, what in the world are you doing? Family is supposed to stick together. You can't simply cut us off over a minor disagreement. I paused, a chilling smirk playing on my lips. A minor disagreement? I repeated, then turned back, my eyes like steel. This isn't a minor disagreement. This is a betrayal. I walked swiftly to the door. Before I crossed the threshold, Eleanor's voice echoed one last time, laced with anger and a thinly veiled threat. If you walk out that door, don't ever expect to return. I didn't stop. I had no need to return. I had all the answers I needed. The drive back to San Diego felt heavy, a boulder pressing on my chest. The bitter words from dinner, Genevieve's disdainful glares, Thomas's smug smirk, and my parents' suffocating silence replayed in my mind. The city lights blurred past my car window, stretching endlessly along the highway like hollow streaks of artificial illumination. I used to call that house my home, my family. Now, it was nothing more than a black hole that had consumed every ounce of my effort and affection. Back in my apartment, I tossed my bag onto the sofa, poured myself a glass of Chardonnay, and sank into the plush cushions. A long sigh escaped my lips. I didn't even have the energy to be angry anymore. Only exhaustion and weariness remained. Thomas's tuition, the lavish gifts Eleanor suggested during holidays, the family vacations I'd financed. A wave of bitter betrayal washed over me, a burning sensation in my throat. I'd poured everything into this family like a fool, while to them, I was nothing more than a walking, breathing bank account. I tapped the Cancel Recurring Payments button. The screen flashed, confirming the cancellation. I stared at the words successfully canceled, and an unfamiliar sense of relief flooded through me. It felt as if I'd just severed an invisible chain that had bound me for years. But I knew they wouldn't let this go easily. The first call came the next morning. Eleanor's number. I ignored it. The second call. The third. The fourth. She didn't give up. By the fifth call, I silenced my phone, letting it go straight to voicemail. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen island, and checked my messages.
Isabel, I can't believe you did this. Do you understand the dire financial straits the house is in? Isabel, don't be so selfish. Family is supposed to support each other. Isabel, please call me back. I set down my mug, closed my eyes, and inhaled deeply. I figured they'd discovered the ramifications of my actions by now. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Arthur. I stared at the screen, feeling my heart sink. In the past, I would have answered immediately. But now, I knew this call wasn't to apologize or defend me. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I played the message. Isabel, you need to reconsider. Eleanor is extremely distraught. You can't simply sever ties over a minor misunderstanding. We are family. Family. I scoffed. If I were truly family, wouldn't they have supported me?
Isabel, this is absolutely pathetic. You're such a petty, selfish person. Isabel, do you really think you're superior to us? If you didn't want to help, you should have stated so initially, instead of pretending to be the good one. Isabel, you've destroyed this family. Congratulations. I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. Did they honestly believe I was in the wrong? Then, Thomas called. This time, I answered. Isabel, what in the world do you think you're doing? Taking back what's rightfully mine. You're disgusting, Isabel. You cut off our support just because they didn't leave you an inheritance. You're nothing but a greedy leech. This isn't about money, Thomas. It's about respect, something I never received from any of you. You're a venomous snake. You think you can abandon this family without consequences. Just wait. He hung up before I could respond. A cold shiver ran down my spine. They weren't going to stop. I stared at my phone, then at my contact list. Each name, Eleanor, Arthur, Genevieve, Thomas, glowed on the screen. The people who'd relied on me their entire lives, only to turn on me the moment I stopped providing. Not a single one of them expressed regret. Not a single one apologized. All they offered was anger, threats, and insults. I gripped my phone tightly, then slowly pressed the block number button. One by one, their names faded, disappearing from my contact list. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of profound peace. I knew they would try to return, but at least for tonight, I could sleep without the weight of their demands and accusations pressing down on me. I set down my phone, took a sip of wine, and for the first time in years, smiled. I was free. 3 weeks passed in a tense silence. After blocking their numbers, I savored a rare period of peace. No guilt-tripping calls, no accusatory messages, no relentless demands. I focused on work, established new routines, and for the first time in years, lived without the suffocating weight of obligation. But I wasn't naive enough to believe it was truly over. And I was right. On Friday afternoon, as I sat in a conference room awaiting a client presentation, my phone buzzed incessantly. A message from Eleanor. Isabel, the family is holding an urgent meeting. You must be present. 7 p.m., the old house. This isn't an invitation. It's your responsibility. Family meeting. I closed my eyes, irritation flaring. This wasn't a gesture of goodwill. This was an ambush. I could ignore it. I could continue with my new life. But some foolish part of me, some part that still clung to the naive hope of miracles, wanted to see what they would attempt next. I sent a single word in reply. When I arrived, Thomas's BMW and Genevieve's shockingly pink Mini Cooper were already parked in the driveway. As I stepped onto the porch, Eleanor opened the door almost immediately, a strained smile plastered on her face. Isabel, you finally decided to come home. I stepped inside. The once familiar house now felt stifling. Arthur sat in the center of the living room, his expression grave. Thomas and Genevieve lounged on the sofa, their eyes gleaming with triumph. Something felt profoundly wrong. Slowly, I pulled out a chair, sat down, crossed my legs, and folded my arms. So, I said flatly, what is the purpose of this gathering? Arthur cleared his throat, his gaze sharp. We need to resolve this tension. I let out a dry chuckle. Tension? You mean the fact that I ceased financing all of you? Eleanor exhaled, attempting to maintain a calm demeanor. Isabel, you overreacted. Your father and I only desired what was best for you. Thomas scoffed. Did you even consider the impact of your actions before cutting us off like that? Don't you see how childish and selfish that was? I clenched my jaw. Childish? Selfish? I kept this family afloat for over a decade. Genevieve crossed her arms, her voice soft yet laced with venom. You're acting like a victim. But let's be realistic. You're simply enraged because Mom and Dad didn't leave you an inheritance, aren't you? A cold fury burned in my chest. I slowly stood, my gaze sweeping across their faces. I came here believing you might finally acknowledge your wrongdoing. But no, you're still the same parasitic leeches, selfish, ungrateful. Eleanor shot up from her seat, her voice as sharp as a knife. If you walk out that door, don't expect to be welcomed back. I paused at the doorway, my hand on the doorknob. I turned, locking eyes with her, my voice as cold as ice. I never felt welcome here in the first place. Then, I opened the door and walked away without looking back. I drove home, my heart pounding against my ribs. I didn't know what they would attempt next, but I knew they wouldn't let it go. And just as I anticipated, the moment I arrived at my apartment, I froze. My door was sealed shut. A thick layer of expanding foam covered the entire door frame, spilling over the edges, hardened like concrete. Someone had deliberately sabotaged my home. I didn't need to guess who. My grip tightened around my phone, fury boiling in my veins. I opened my security camera app, my pulse racing as I rewound the footage. There he was, Thomas, wearing a gray hoodie and a baseball cap, grinning smugly as he held a can of expanding foam, spraying it all over my door. My hands clenched into fists. Did they really think they could intimidate me? Did they think I would crawl back, begging for forgiveness? No, I wasn't letting them get away with this. I stood in front of my sealed door, my breath heavy with anger. I wasn't shocked. Nothing about them could surprise me anymore. But I was furious. Not because of their childish antics, but because of their arrogance. The sheer stupidity of thinking they could do this, and face no consequences. I reopened the security app, and fast-forwarded the footage. Just as I suspected, Thomas appeared on the screen, wearing a gray hoodie, his cap pulled low, but I recognized his distinctive gait. I recognized the smug smirk as he aimed the nozzle at my door, flooding every crevice with foam. Every movement was a deliberate insult. He did this because he thought I wouldn't fight back. He was wrong. Calmly, I saved the video, took clear screenshots of his face, and immediately called the police. 30 minutes later, a young police officer stood in front of my apartment, his expression a blend of sympathy and professionalism. I showed him the footage, explaining the situation in precise detail. "Do you wish to file a formal complaint?" he asked, his tone neutral, as if hoping I would let it slide. I let out a cold chuckle. "I didn't call you here for a friendly chat." He nodded, opening his notebook to begin an official report. "He's your brother, isn't he?" I met his gaze, my voice ice cold. "Not anymore." The next morning, Arthur called. "Isabel, sweetheart, does this really have to escalate this far? Are you calling to ask me to drop the charges?" "It's not that, it's just, you know," Thomas was upset. He didn't intend any harm. "No harm?" He sealed my door shut. "Dad, what if I'd had an important meeting? What if I had a pet or a child inside?" Silence. He thought he could intimidate me. "I'll show him he chose the wrong person." "Do you really want to push this to such extremes?" "It's not about me. It's about Thomas's actions. If he didn't want consequences, he shouldn't have acted so recklessly." "What do you want to drop the charges?" $33,000. "What?" "That covers the cost of repairing my door, legal fees should this drag on, and damages for harassment. A reasonable sum, I'd say." "This is extortion." "No, Dad, this is accountability. Thomas doesn't have that kind of money." "Then you and Eleanor can assist him. You've covered for him his entire life. This is just one more instance." "Claudine," Arthur almost whispered, "you're tearing this family apart." "This family tore itself apart a long time ago. I no longer needed them." I stood before my apartment door, now fully repaired, my fingers tracing the smooth surface. The $33,000 wasn't the significant aspect. What mattered was that, for the first time, they'd been forced to accept responsibility for their actions. They could hate me. They could label me a traitor. But for the first time in my life, they couldn't force me to obey. I smirked, taking a sip of wine. They thought they could break me. But in the end, they were the ones who lost. I'd assumed that after the $33,000 payment, they'd finally leave me alone. But I'd given them far too much credit. Losing money was one thing. Losing control, that they couldn't handle. And when they could no longer manipulate me with their usual tactics, they resorted to underhanded methods. It began with a deluge of hypocritical messages from distant relatives, whose faces I barely recognized. "Isabel, I'm profoundly disappointed in you. Your parents sacrificed their entire lives for you, and this is how you repay them. Isabel, don't let money erode your humanity. Remember, family is forever. I can't believe you're heartless enough to abandon your parents like this. They're on the verge of losing their home. Don't you feel any guilt?" It wasn't true. I'd shouldered their financial burdens for over a decade, paying their mortgage, covering their bills, funding Thomas and Genevieve's lifestyles, without ever demanding anything in return. They weren't abandoned. They'd used me, and I was finished. I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook. I didn't post frequently, but today would be an exception. I no longer needed their love. I simply needed to strip them of their ability to twist the truth. My fingers flew across the keyboard, each word appearing on the screen, sharp, clear, leaving no room for deception. I attempted to be a good daughter, but they never truly loved me. For over 10 years, I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for my parents, covering their mortgage, bills, and even my siblings' tuition. I never complained, believing families should support each other. But when my parents drafted their will, they bequeathed everything to Thomas and Genevieve. When I questioned this, their response was, "Because you have a career, you don't need it." When I protested, they called me selfish. When I stopped financing them, they labeled me a traitor. And now, they're spreading lies that I abandoned them, that they're about to lose their home, that I'm a heartless daughter. Here's the truth. They aren't losing their home. They're merely losing the free financial support I provided for years. I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I'm sharing it for anyone else who's been exploited by their own family. You don't have to continue suffering. Setting boundaries isn't ungrateful. Refusing to be used isn't betrayal. And sometimes, family isn't defined by blood, but by those who genuinely respect and appreciate you. I've walked away from their lives, and I have no regret. I've been in your position. Stay strong. You don't owe them anything. You've done more than enough. I admire your courage for speaking out. Family may be flawed, but they're still family. Don't air your dirty laundry like this. She's just seeking attention. Shameful to expose your own parents like this. I didn't care. I expected this backlash. 3 hours after posting the truth, Eleanor called. "Isabel, what in the world are you doing?" Calmly telling the truth. "You're destroying this family's reputation." "No, Mom. You did that the moment you decided to portray me as the villain in your story. You're going to regret this." "No, you're the one who will regret it." I hung up, feeling lighter than ever. They couldn't conceal the truth anymore, and for the first time, I'd reclaimed my voice. 3 months after exposing the truth, I'd never felt so free. No more guilt-tripping messages. No more heavy phone calls. No one could manipulate me anymore. I was finally living for myself. At first, the emptiness was unsettling. Losing a family, no matter how toxic, left a strange void. But then I realized, it wasn't a loss. It was freedom. I immersed myself in my career, leaving the chaos of my past behind. With no one leeching off my income, my money was entirely my own. I enrolled in a photography class, something I'd never dared to prioritize before. I began traveling, exploring places I'd always postponed because I was too busy supporting my family. 3 months later, I was in Paris, sipping coffee by the Seine. 6 months later, I stood atop Machu Picchu, feeling the fierce wind rush through the ancient ruins. For the first time in my life, I was responsible for no one but myself, and it was worth more than any inheritance. I didn't follow them, but news of my old family still reached me, through former acquaintances, through whispers in the community. Eleanor had taken a job as a waitress at a small diner. A former colleague saw her, and said she no longer possessed the commanding aura she once projected. She wasn't spending money on spas or designer clothing anymore. Arthur, the man who'd remained silent through every injustice I endured, was now working as a laborer at a construction supply store. He had no one left to rely on, no one to pay his bills. Thomas was unemployed. He'd laughed at me when I left, but now, no one was funding his failed business ventures. Genevieve was still trapped in her delusion, desperately trying to become a social media influencer, but no one was paying for her vacations or designer outfits anymore. My entire family was struggling, but I didn't feel guilty. I'd given them a chance, and they'd squandered it with their own greed. A year later, I met Alex. I hadn't been searching for love, but he entered my life like a gentle breeze, demanding nothing, expecting nothing. He wasn't like the people I'd known before. He wasn't someone who only saw me for what I could give him. He saw me, truly saw me. We met during a hiking trip with mutual friends. At first, I thought he was just like everyone else, another fleeting stranger. But then, he listened patiently, without ever demanding anything from me except me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to prove my worth. I didn't have to buy love. I only had to be myself. Standing on my apartment balcony one December evening, I looked down at the city lights, shimmering below. No one controlled me anymore. No one exploited me anymore. I no longer needed my old family. I once believed being excluded from the will was a humiliation, a betrayal. But now, I realized it was the greatest gift they'd ever given me. Isabel's story isn't just a narrative of family betrayal. it's the journey of someone who once believed sacrifice would bring love and recognition. Many find themselves trapped in the cycle of being used by those who should cherish them most. But this story proves that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-respect. Sometimes, losing a toxic family isn't a loss. It's an opportunity to find freedom, happiness, and people who truly value you. What are your thoughts on Isabel's story? Have you experienced something similar or known someone who has? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking, heartfelt, and real stories about family and life.